Hello, everyone, and welcome to this quarter's True Community Call. We're really excited you're here, and so we're going to dive into a little bit of housekeeping. Just so you know, all participants are on mute because we're recording the session. Please feel free to put any questions in the Q&A box as they arise, and to use the networking or the chat box for any virtual networking. We'd love to see who's on, and you can introduce yourself, maybe where you're located, who you're working with. If you need any technical support during this webinar, please contact true@gbci.org. And because we will be recording this, we'll look to share it with you later through our YouTube page. Check out our upcoming True events at true.gbci.org. All right, let's dive in. So today our topic is zero waste and circular packaging. My name is Susie Vincent, and I'm one of the directors with the True program. I'm really excited to introduce you to our panelists shortly, and you may also hear from my colleague Celeste McMickle, who is monitoring the Q&A and the chat. Before we dive into the speakers and the Q&A to follow, I'd like to begin by framing this issue of packaging for us, and why and how True can really be a part of the solution. If this is your first True webinar, you know that we constantly talk about working upstream. So when a lot of us hear of zero waste for the first time, we think about recycling. If that's the case with you, you're not alone. But as you learn a lot more from our panelists today, I also encourage you to listen and consider how we might be redesigning, rethinking, reducing, and reusing packaging as well. Sorry, give me just a moment. My slides are taking a second. Here we go. So if you aren't aware, almost 1/3 of the amount of waste in our landfills here in the US is packaging waste. True really works to help businesses take responsibility for their packaging so that this then lessens the burden on consumers or individuals like you and I, and our household waste that ends up in that municipal waste management infrastructure. Last week, a report actually was just issued about the status of plastic recycling here in the US. Our recycling rate for plastics has now gone below 6%, which is a drop from over 8% in 2018, which is the last time the US EPA published recycling figures. In addition to plastics, here is some data from that same 2018 US EPA results of the other commonly common packaging materials. So corrugated boxes are one of the largest single product categories in our municipal solid waste. The next comes plastic, then glass, and then aluminum. And you can reference the US EPA to see more facts and figures on current diversion rates for these materials. And I think we might even hear some of that from our speakers pretty soon here. So sustainable and circular packaging will help you if that's something you're striving towards as an organization or a business. It will help you to achieve many credits within the True rating system in the categories you see circled here, but not limited to these specific credits. So in our reduce credit category, we have adopt a goal to reduce the overall size and amount of product packaging. In the reuse credit category, we want you to document your pallet or shipping container reuse. So, reusing that packaging as well, even if it's on a heavier duty packaging type end, or it could just be a cardboard box. Zero waste purchasing. So there's multiple credits in this category, but really think about how everything you're purchasing within your facility can be making a better impact. You can do something better than probably the baseline of what you're doing now. And how can you extend those purchasing decisions into making more sustainable packaging purchases? Leadership credit 4 is actually one of my favorite credits in the rating system, because it's encouraging companies and organizations to take responsibility for the products and packaging that they're putting out there. If you aren't familiar with extended producer responsibility, this is really kind of in line with that same thinking, where we're trying to get the waste producer to now be taking some responsibility for this. So this could be like a product take back system, a remanufacturing or refurbishment program, and then of course making sure that you work with, in these upstream management categories, your vendors, to eliminate non-recyclable packaging and requesting that they use 100% recyclable packaging. As you all know, as we are in this movement towards a more circular economy, we want to be putting some demand on better recycling and better infrastructure that will be coming, so that there is a market for all of these materials to ultimately stay in their circular life as long as possible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, which is Adam Gindel from the Recycling Partnership. Adam is the director of Circular Ventures, and I just love that title because I always think of circular economy being an adventure, but here we go. Adam does bring a collaborative and systems thinking approach to circular economy challenges, focusing on building bridges between stakeholder groups and then translating these larger trends into action. As a part of the Circular Ventures team, he serves as a point person for the PET Recycling Coalition, which is an impact-driven initiative aimed at broadening the circularity of PET and unlocking new sources of recycled content. Adam's approach is grounded in an extensive understanding of sustainable material flows and life cycle thinking, having studied the international landscape of recycling policy and emerging recovery technologies at Eunomia's Research and Consulting, as well as bringing over a decade of experience working across the packaging and packaged goods value chain at the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. So just a touch on that, Adam, you can share more later, but the Sustainable Packaging Coalition is another great resource. We don't have a speaker from today, but wanted to put that out there for you all to check them out as well. Adam works closely with many multinational corporations, NGOs, startups, government agencies, academic institutions, and others, gaining a deep appreciation for the value of these diverse perspectives in addressing these systemic challenges that we're facing. He works to bring it all together by guiding big steps towards a more resilient and sustainable materials economy. And I can't wait to learn more. So Adam, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Susie. It's a privilege to be here with this audience today. And I want to apologize to everybody for having to listen to that very verbose bio of mine. I didn't really put together that it was going to be read. So next time I'm going to put together something with a little bit of a bigger touch on brevity. But I am very pleased to be here with you today. My name is Adam Gindel. I do serve as the director of Circular Ventures, and my new career aspiration is to be the director of Circular Adventures. But that's probably going to take some time and some effort on my behalf. And I wanted to take you all through a really fast tour of some of the issues that the Recycling Partnership thinks are significant in the circular economy landscape today and the ways that we're going about working to address them. So my next slide, please. So for those of you who have not heard of the Recycling Partnership, it is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We work to transform the recycling system all across the United States for all materials and all people, and really for all of the stakeholder groups that touch recycling. And as our colorful diagram here suggests, there are a lot of different stakeholder groups that have very important roles to play in the recycling system. We think of recycling as an environmental service. We can also think of it as a sort of value chain, not that much different than the supply chains that manufacture our goods and get them to our homes every day. We want to think about recycling in the same way as an ecosystem in and of itself of highly interdependent players. So our work does touch on each of these stakeholder groups. And I think one of the biggest superpowers of the Recycling Partnership is the ability to bring these groups together to find common ground and to foster productive conversations. Next slide, please. So this collage here are the logos of our funding partners. And the very foundation of the Recycling Partnership is grant giving. The Recycling Partnership issues grants for a variety of benefits, and all of our financial support comes from these funding partners, or at least the vast majority of it, I should say. So we're very proud to work with this diverse group of companies and organizations. Each of these partners of ours come to the table because they have a deeply vested interest in enhancing the circularity of packaging. At the forefront of that is the idea of getting more packaging recycled, divert it from landfill, get it into a more beneficial end-of-life fate. It does not stop there, though. This stakeholder group also has a deeply rooted interest in increasing the amount of recycled content that they can use in manufacturing new packaging, and the ancillary benefits as well, such as reduced pollution, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and using materials in a system that is safe and healthy for all of the people who touch that material throughout its life cycle. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as we do this, we always like to say that we mobilize people, data, and solutions. A lot of our work is data-driven. We do a lot of independent research ourselves. We contract with others to undertake studies. We publish reports. We share figures and facts and data points. The best expression of our work is that mobilizing of solutions. And again, that's primarily through granting, and primarily granting to communities to augment and improve their recycling programs. We always like to lens this work through the idea of not just diverting tons from landfill, but creating tons for new manufacturing cycles. And then in a different corner of the Recycling Partnership, we have a small arm that's working on policy and bringing together that variety of stakeholders to prop up policies that have bipartisan support and support from those different and varied actors that touch the recycling system. Next slide, please. To give you a feel for some of our community-facing granting initiatives, here's a short list of some of them. And again, I wanted to emphasize this because this is truly the foundation of what the partnership does. Our earliest research suggested that the lowest hanging fruit to improve and grow recycling is to improve and grow the amount of collection systems that are out there on the street in residential recycling programs. So that's what a lot of this work is aimed at. For years and years, I think the calling card of the Recycling Partnership was issuing grants to replace curbside receptacles with rolling curbside carts, with very clear studies that show the substantial increase in tonnage that residents will put into the recycling system if they have a large rolling lidded cart. And that's a benefit for all materials, and that's important to us. All types of paper, all types of plastic, aluminum, steel, glass, etc. The last line on here, you'll note, is MRF interventions. And for those of you who are not familiar with that acronym, MRF is Material Recovery Facility. Those are the facilities that sort the jumble of packaging and printed paper that we put in our recycling receptacles. Communities play a humongous role in recycling and providing that point of entry to residents. MRFs play an equally important role in what they often call unscrambling the egg and taking the jumble that's sent to them and getting those materials to their appropriate designations. MRFs rely on a lot of logic and magic to do that, and we have granting mechanisms that help them improve and grow as well. So next slide, please. The corner of the Recycling Partnership that I work in is called the Circular Ventures team, and that's what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on, if not only for the idea that it's the work that I'm most close to and most familiar with. In the Circular Ventures corner of our organization, we've got some work that's focused on specific types of materials within the ecosystem of packaging. So the four here are our most prominent as of today: aluminum cans, film and flexibles, polypropylene, and the initiative that I'm leading, what we're calling the PET Recycling Coalition. So I want to share a little bit about each of these initiatives and also some other initiatives that are closely related. So next slide, please. Thank you. So our Polypropylene Recycling Coalition was founded on the idea that polypropylene is a nascent recycling stream that is growing and has a high ceiling, but today is currently underachieving against its potential. So we identified that the primary lever to pull is at the MRF and it's giving grants to MRFs so that they can catalyze their investments of better sorting equipment, primarily optical sortation equipment that very readily identifies polypropylene packaging and can sort it into its own dedicated stream. There's sky-high demand for that stream right now, and a fairly attractive financial equation for the MRF operator. So when the recycling partnership offers grant money, that's there to be leveraged by their other grants or internally generated funds and tip them over the line to get a new recycling stream in that facility or to improve a stream that's already there but is underperforming. You can see from these metrics I put on this slide, the Polypropylene Recycling Coalition has had a fairly enormous amount of success in its less than 2-year history so far. Through these grants, we've touched about 7.5% of the US population and impacted their ability in a positive way to recycle more polypropylene packaging. I should mention for reference, for those of you who aren't plastic packaging enthusiasts the way I am, polypropylene packaging is primarily things like yogurt cups, drink cups from quick serve restaurants and establishments like that. There are K-cups for Keurig. Those are made of polypropylene as well. So there's a pretty wide spectrum of material. It all has value in the eyes of recyclers. Next slide, please. Real quickly, just to give you an idea of where these grant funds are going. So each dot on this map represents one MRF that has received a grant from the Polypropylene Recycling Coalition. And we do pride ourselves on the idea that if you overlaid a population density map, it would pretty closely follow this. So yes, there's still some blank spaces that we'd like to fill in, but I hope this illustrates the idea that the partnership's work is there for the entirety of the United States. Next slide, please. And to give you a snapshot of the supporters of the Polypropylene Recycling Coalition. These are the companies. I'll also draw your attention down to the bottom row, our advisors for this initiative. We're so pleased to work with so many of our peer NGOs. And it's a mutual undertaking where we hope to reinforce each other's work and find ways to have productive intersections and be complementary to each other's initiatives. Next slide, please. Another one of our coalitions is what we call the Film and Flexible Recycling Coalition. And this one is very different than what I just described with our work on polypropylene. There is a very, very long-term goal that's shared with our organization, other organizations, and a wide number of our stakeholders. That goal is, let's find a way to get flexible film packaging, think everything from a plastic grocery bag to the overwrap around the paper towels you buy, to get those in curbside systems, which today is a total non-starter with 99% of the recycling community. So this is a long wavelength initiative. It is not at the scaling stage yet, doing really interesting things on pilot scales and conducting investigations, testing innovative equipment and processes to learn what is working in the very small percentage of the recycling landscape where films and bags are permissible in curbside systems, and how might we scale and otherwise adjust so that they can be scaled, those positive systems. Next slide, please. Thank you. So similarly, another smattering of logos here of the supporters of the Film and Flexible Recycling Coalition. Again, we're so pleased to have such a robust and diverse group of companies and organizations that support this work and partner with us. Next slide. The initiative that is my primary responsibility that is just about to have its public launch announcement in a few weeks is what we're calling the PET Recycling Coalition. PET, that would be your plastic with the resident identification code #1. Think soda bottles, water bottles, and also a lot of important non-bottle rigid packaging types like clamshells for food service or other goods. Also, what we call cold cups, soda cups at restaurants and convenience stores and whatnot. There are PET trays and a galaxy of other PET packaging types. This initiative is focused on, of course, getting more of those packaging types in the recycling system, but also doing some thoughtful sort of untangling of the different trajectories of those PET streams. Today, a lot of PET packaging goes into new PET packaging, but it's convoluted in there. We've got bottles that are being recycled into trays. There are trays that are being recycled into bottles. The recycling partnership typically doesn't subscribe to the school of thought that everything must be a perfect closed loop and bottles must always be recycled into bottles. We think it's okay if a bottle gets recycled into a tray, if that tray can then be recycled into a bottle. But not to get too far into the technical nuances today, but there are some challenges that are posed by those crossing of the streams. We also have to consider the idea that the carpet industry currently consumes something in the ballpark of around 40 to 50% of all of the PET packaging that is recycled today. That's important for the carpet industry. It lowers their footprint. We'd like to make sure that there is intention and thoughtfulness behind the direction of these different PET recycling streams to those different end markets. Next slide, please. So clearly all of this work in these material specific groups is aimed at enhancing the circularity of the different categories. And there's an ultimate goal in mind of being able to say that this type of packaging is circular, plain and simple. But we need a rule book to follow, and perhaps even a roadmap that gets us to that destination. So to generate that, the Recycling Partnership pulled together 30 really important stakeholders in the recycling system to form what we call the Circularity Council. And with cooperation from the Circularity Council, acting as a sounding board and providing invaluable feedback and input, we just released a few weeks ago what we're calling the Pathway to Circularity Residential Recyclability Framework. And yes, that is a mouthful. And so it puts some very transparent guardrails around the criteria that must be met in order for a packaging category to be considered recyclable. Recyclable as in usually thought of the chief component of circularity. And so without spending too much time on this, you can see the 5 main headers there. They touch on things like, is the packaging designed thoughtfully? Does it have any components that will be disruptors in the recycling system? Can the majority of US residents put that type of packaging in their recycling receptacle? Does their local program take it? Will it sort well in a material recovery facility? Does it have strong, diverse, and robust end markets? Does somebody want to buy the material, basically? And then lastly, is the entire category recyclable, or is it just small segments of that category? Because for better or worse, very often we learn that in the eyes of the recycling community, unless the entire category is recyclable, you really can't consider any of it recyclable. So next slide, please. So I just mentioned a key component of our system of determining recyclability is understanding the percentage of the US population that can recycle something, the percentage that has a program that accepts a certain type of packaging. And we're very proud to announce also just a number of weeks ago, what we're calling the National Recycling Database. It's a gigantic undertaking from our data and research team using some very fancy, buzz phrases that I don't understand, like artificial intelligence and machine learning and neural network. We've got a system that in real time dynamically learns through the internet the types of materials that are accepted in over 9,000 recycling programs in the United States. I don't have the numbers handy, but that covers the vast, vast majority of the US population that has a recycling program. And so this is the backbone of a really cool chatbot that we've built, where no matter where you live in the US, you can text this chatbot and ask it, can I recycle my fill in the blank, and it will reference this database and give you an answer. We can also use it to monitor the recycling landscape, again, in real time, to learn how these recycling programs are changing. Are they adding materials? Are they dropping materials? Are they switching from a system of drop-off receptacles to a curbside program? Those types of dimensions. The next slide. Lastly, and I'll give this one a very light touch, we've got a really awesome tool that we call Plastic IQ that we developed in partnership with the consultancy Systemic. Plastic IQ is a way for mainly brand owners and retailers to learn more about how their circularity targets can ladder up into meaningful change. So if you're familiar with the idea of science-based targets for greenhouse gas emissions, the idea that if everybody does their part, we can reduce climate change to the 2 degrees Celsius limit. Plastic IQ is a similar thought process, except with the idea of plastics. How good of a goal will make meaningful progress towards a system that we all envision? Next slide. I think I've just got a couple more. Thank you. Yeah, so in closing, we're very proud of all that we've accomplished and the stakeholder groups that we've brought together and the meaningful change that we've enacted. There is so much more to be done, and I don't think anybody is declaring victory over many things in the vast scheme of circularity. These are some of our goals for the next 3 years. This is the direction of travel for us. As you can see, it's a combination of many of the things that I've touched on, getting more tonnage into the system. We want to regain, I think, consumer trust in the system and try to wash away all the conspiracy theories around recycling out there. Although there are some kernels of truth to some of them, the system as it is today is really quite strong and robust and well functioning. Needs improvement, but is not broken. And then finally, on the last, again, I'll mention, mostly in passing, that we do have to recognize the policy component of all of this. And so we have a strong acknowledgement that good recycling policy can do a lot to move the needle and really must be pursued in conjunction with programs like our grant giving. Next slide, please. About a year ago, we released what we call the Paying It Forward report. And I wanted to share this quickly just to give you a feel for the magnitude of the challenge as we see it. We crunch a lot of numbers against the premise of what do we want the recycling system of the future to be? What does success look like 5 years from now? And then back calculated to learn the steps that are needed to get from where we are today to where we want to be then and put price tags on it. And where we landed is that $17 billion is needed over the next 5 years. And that's a lot of investment. It is not outside of the realm of possibility. So we do see a path to getting not just a functioning, but a thriving recycling system. And again, I'll emphasize, we have a long way to go from the activities that we're doing today, but we feel so grateful for all the work that's been done with us and our partners to create that blueprint and to put some science behind it like this report. So last slide here, just to give you an example of some of the impacts that the Recycling Partnership has had to date. Yes, this is a bragging slide, and no, I won't go through all of it. But I hope it impresses upon you that our work has touched such a significant portion of the US population, such a significant number of recycling programs. And what's always most important to our many of our partners is a whole lot of tons of material have been positively affected. So I will close there. I understand we're doing Q&A at the end. I saw some questions coming in and I'm grateful to have them. So please keep them coming and I will happily turn it over to our next panelist. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Adam. And yes, don't be humble about your introduction. It's good for folks to know who you all are, where you come from, and the impact that you're making. So appreciate all of that. I also, you know, it was fun to see on some of your partnership slides a few of our true customers that are pursuing zero waste. So not just doing it themselves, but supporting the activities that need to be happening with consumers and our communities. So thank you so much. Next up is Scott Defife, who is the president of the Glass Packaging Institute. He has been there since August of 2019. He also serves as the president of the Glass Recycling Foundation and on the leadership of the Glass Recycling Coalition. So three kind of closely knit organizations. You'll hear him explain in just a moment. He was also appointed to the board of the Recycling Partnership in May of 2020 and chairs the Community Engagement Committee. So Scott and Adam are no strangers, and you may have even seen the Glass Packaging Institute's logo on Adam's slide previously. So before Scott was this leading voice in the glass container and recycling industry, he served as the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Plastics Industry Association and as an Executive Vice President for Government Affairs and Communications at the National Restaurant Association. So lots of interesting background that brings you to this point. He also served as the Senior Managing Director of Government Affairs and Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. So I know Scott has a lot of interesting background. We specifically, when we first met, talked a lot about our retail centers and the roles that some of them could be playing. So if we have any of you on the phone today, would love to engage with you in the Q&A. But I will turn it over here to Scott, who has had his 30 plus years career in Washington between trade associations, government affairs, and Capitol Hill with this focus on energy, environment, and economic and financial policy. So without further ado, Scott, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, an overly long introduction that is slightly embarrassed. Maybe I'll work with Adam on
No,
shortening both of our.
we like the whole background.
That's okay.
It saves everyone from going to LinkedIn and reading your all's resumes.
Yeah, it's true. And I did see some questions on policy, and I hope to be able to help answer questions on policy because I've worked on federal, state, and local policy, for 30 years, which is dating me also. But I'm very happy to be here and talking to you about glass and glass recycling. You're going to notice some similarities to some of the things that Adam said. And I think that, one of the important things to distinguish early on is while each of the packaging materials has their own highest, best use and different qualities, when we're talking about recycling systems, they all work together. And the Glass Packaging Institute and our members support the work of the Recycling Partnership as well, because there's a key phrase, we're all in the bin together, and improving the system improves the availability for recycled content for all materials. And there are system improvements that we can work on together. But let me give you a little bit of an overview of the glass industry in the United States and North America. Yes, the GPI, we're the trade association representing the container manufacturers. So my members primarily are in the business of the raw materials and making the bottles and jars, and then everything that goes along with distributing them to end market brand customers, food and beverage producers largely. The Glass Recycling Coalition is everyone in various industries, could be fiberglass, could be aggregates and other people who are involved in using recycled glass, because there are other uses for recycled glass than making new bottles. We like to think that we're at the top of that food chain, if you will, but there are other uses for the material when it is collected. And also some brands join the Glass Recycling Coalition. The Glass Recycling Coalition is all about education and information and has one particular certification program going that helps to certify material recovery facilities to show that they do glass well. And this is a big component of what's going on in the system at large that needs to be improved, that is really not discussed as much as it probably needs to be, but I'll get into it in my presentation. The Glass Recycling Foundation was created from the Glass Recycling Coalition, and we now have taken on the fundraising part and then the grant making part to help communities who need resources to help expand or recover glass recycling that may have been dropped during the past several years due to some of the commodity market issues. And I can talk about that as well. So GPI, GRC, GRF, I'm involved in all three and work on these collectively with other industries that are involved in glass. Just a quick reminder, most of the people on this call probably are positive on glass. The vast majority of consumers are very positive on glass. We have 90% plus rates in terms of preference for material and expectation that glass, knowledge of and expectation that glass is recyclable. And they get very angry if they find out that their glass is not being recycled through. In addition, it's the preferred packaging for beer and wine. This is a chance for me to really explain to you that 95% of glass packaging is for food and beverage. Okay, there's a small percentage for things that would be pharmaceutical or cosmetic, and that's the same glass. And some of your tableware, the glass that you're in your home is the same glass, but we can't always be sure that it's exactly the same material characteristics. Pyrex or borosilicate glass is different. The glass that you would use in your ovens for baking and things of that nature, it has a higher temperature point than the container glass, and so we don't mix those two streams. But the vast majority of glass is for a food or beverage product. Next slide. And there's lots of benefits to recycling glass. It is infinitely recyclable. Once you've turned the raw materials into glass the first time, which is not just melting, but there is a chemical reaction that goes on inside the furnace when you combine the materials together to form glass. It can be recycled infinitely. the quality never degrades. You can use it over and over and over again. As many times as we can get it back, we can turn it into a new bottle or jar. Improving glass recovery is a direct relationship to landfill and zero waste goals, right? So a lot of these goals are diverting tonnage from landfills and things of that nature. Glass is usually the third, fourth, largest percentage of material that's going through the waste and recycling stream. And by taking care of glass and keeping it out of landfill, we can lower carbon emissions and lower the impact of glass production in the United States and North America. The industry had set a year ago, knowing that the federal government and that many of our end market customers were very focused on improving the recyclability and the recycled content of material here, and knowing what our European colleagues are able to do with a better waste management system in Europe, the US industry had set a goal of moving from the low 30s to 50% plus of glass recycling rates in this country, and in trying to make sure that glass is getting back to the industry to be remade into new bottles so that we can improve the recycled content average for the typical bottle made in North America up to 50% or higher by the end of the decade. And so we studied the supply chains very specifically of where is the glass and where is it not getting back into the supply chain, and what are the steps that we need to take in order to improve that going forward. Next slide. And it really varies quite widely across the United States. Many of you will be familiar with container deposit laws, otherwise known as bottle bills. The bottle bill states there are 10 of them. They have much higher recycling rates than single stream curbside recycling. And as you can see, Oregon we had identified as the highest performing state, but largely the bottle bill states are 63% glass recycling rates versus non-bottle bill states at 24%. It's just that there's only 10 bottle bill states. It does produce a majority of the glass that our factories get back in for clean cullet because of it's clean and high volume. And so what we're trying to do is work on fixing the glass recycling rates in the non-bottle bill states. And you do that through a mix of policy and infrastructure. Here's my I could riff on this map for an hour, but I won't. The bottle bill states are outlined, so Hawaii, California, Oregon. So everything with a dark border outline are bottle bill states. Otherwise, the dots are a mixture of material recovery facilities that accept glass, and then the circles are glass manufacturing locations. So you can see that glass manufacturing is widespread throughout the East Coast, largely east of the Mississippi and the Great Lakes in the Southeast. There's lots of glass recycling, glass manufacturing, also fiberglass plants spread throughout that region. And then you kind of skip over to Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and then you skip over again to the West Coast. There are 6 plants on the West Coast making a lot of wine bottles. We can talk about that a little bit if you want to. The states shaded in green are states where we are actively working with state and local governments to improve glass recycling in the past year. Since the introduction of our industry roadmap and goal that we just talked about, getting to 50%, that spurred a lot of conversation with state governments and local governments to engage in improving the glass recycling system across the country. The stars, I want to point out, are MRFs, material recovery facilities, that have been through the GRC MRF certification project to show that they do glass really, really well. This is a key issue to improving the glass recycling rates across the country, is that the existing system of material recovery facilities, everything that goes in that blue bin, regardless of what's in that blue bin, has to go to a sorting facility first. And the efficacy of the recycling system is dependent on the capabilities of those material recovery facilities. Some are publicly owned, most are privately owned. They are not all the same, and there are no regulations or requirements that they perform to a certain standard in most states. In some states, there are standards, but in most states, there aren't. Again, just some basic information about the difference between quality and volume, right? So single stream is the largest volume. It's the simplest. It's the most convenient for most consumers, but it has the most contamination. And every step you get either a way to a separate stream of material, largely in the European EPR systems, no one relies on commingled single stream. Everyone, all the EPR programs in Europe are relying on separate streams of glass. Some of them are more convenient than others. They can be curbside, or they can be community or public area drop off. You get possibly less recovery rates, but higher quality rates and higher yield rates. So drop-off centers and then drop-off centers for glass only increases everything that you do to keep the material separate, increases the quality. Glass should be recycled. I am here in a hotel room in Las Vegas because I'm going to Waste Expo in a couple hours to make a presentation very similar to this. Glass makes up a significant part of the recycling stream. MRF fees typically cover sorting all the materials. Proper capture and cleaning equals lower cross contamination. For glass is like the perfect poster child for contamination issues in material recovery facilities, but it also has the lowest variable cost. We're a steady rate of payments, and the material value is steady over time as long as it's clean and positive. Oops. Looks like am I still on?
Do you want me to be on the impacts of bottle bills slide, Scott?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. my laptop flashed and glitched, and so I lost the screen. Sorry about that. So impacts of bottle bills, all of the positives: it increases recycling rates, higher quality materials, and reduces disposal costs. It will lower recycling revenue for MRFs. Not necessarily the glass, but they like the aluminum a lot, and because they can ship the aluminum bales overseas and to a wide variety of glass is a domestic resource, doesn't travel overseas. Glass never went to China for recycling. Glass is recycled locally, used locally, and since it is that bond, I call it more of a municipal bond than a high-flying stock. Those prices never soar to the $100, $200, $300 a ton cost. It is, something that a lot of municipalities and MRFs will, kind of set aside to focus on the higher value material, even if it's not necessarily, there are markets nearby. But it also, having bottle bills does increase the cost per ton. We can go to the next slide. Sorry about that. My laptop's acting up. And so efforts that contribute to glass recycling success include, cleaning and sorting, innovation, education, and we need to work a lot on contract language between cities and private sector haulers. There's a lot of detail in the contract language that may apply to other materials that are baled through a positive sort. Like there's a machine at the MRF looking for your polypropylene bottle or your aluminum can, and glass is the negative sort that kind of goes along for the ride all the way through the MRF. So if you want to see how well your MRF is operating, you can examine the glass pile at the end of the process and see all the plastic straws, all the little plastic caps, all the shredded paper is in the glass pile. And that's our basics. So I'm happy to answer questions on policy as well at the end.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate the deep dive on glass, and I just kind of bringing it back to True a little bit. We do have quite a few breweries as well as wineries that have been pursuing true certification. And I'm sure many of them are members of your organizations as well. So.
Yes, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention that in the commercial. You had teed me up on the commercial recycling. Commercial recycling contracts are not the same as residential contracts, and not every city treats them the same. One of the biggest things that can be done to help commercial, bars and restaurants, entertainment, hospitality, do better recycling is for the commercial property management to give more space to recycling in the waste area. Often they only give space for one commingled bin and not a lot. This is the same with organics and composting, from food waste. Think of glass and the organic systems as something that are very similar in the commercial area.
Yeah, that goes back to that redesign, right? We need to be redesigning to allow for that infrastructure to be in place. Well,
Absolutely.
Thanks. We'll come back to you with some questions at the end.
Sure.
Finally, our final panelist, Brandon Spreidlin, is the president of American Box and Recycling. And I had the joy of meeting Brandon a little bit ago. He'll tell you, I won't give away how he's become affiliated with True, but it was something that was even kind of new to me. But being in this industry, kind of sustainability as a whole, my whole career, but more focused on materials management over the last few years, the idea of reuse, right, being even higher and better than recycling, and how American Box is a part of that. So Brandon, I'll turn it over to you and let you share a little bit about your company.
Awesome. Thanks, Susie. And hopefully everyone can hear me okay, and apologize in advance if there's any background noise. I'm actually traveling, stuck in an airport. So, but again, grateful to participate in today's call and hear from other sustainability leaders such as Scott and Adam, and really excited to share a little more about who American Box and Recycling is. And more importantly, just glad to be plugged into the True community, as Susie mentioned. So American Box and Recycling has been creating landfill diversion programs since 1956. And we specialize in creating reuse and recycling programs for cardboard boxes and other recyclable items, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But a bit of a fun fact, you guys can see the building on the slide there. That building is our headquarters in Philadelphia. It was built in 1913 and actually served as a Philadelphia trolley and maintenance facility for well over 80 years. And it was destined to be torn down in 2003, but American Box and Recycling gave it a second life. And it's, again, now it's our headquarters in our largest location. So we really do like to say that reuse is in our DNA all the way down to the building that we occupy. So, what I wanted to do this afternoon is just quickly share a little bit more about our mission at American Box, which is giving materials a second life, and how our connection with True is helping us advance that mission. Most of us are familiar with the fact that corrugated boxes are one of the most sustainable packaging solutions, right up there with glass. And I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of box manufacturing, which is probably funny coming from a company named American Box and Recycling. So I'm going to way oversimplify the process, right? But essentially, a corrugated box begins its life being sourced from a sustainably managed forest. From there, the manufacturing process happens. Those trees are turned to paper and liner board, cut and glued to become a box. And again, if there's any packaging experts on here, you're probably laughing at how simple I made that. But from there, those boxes are sold to a manufacturer, a distributor, retailer. And once that box gets to its final destination, hopefully that box is put into a recycling container, eventually makes its way back to a recycling center. And if all goes well, it gets put right back into the manufacturing process to become a box once again. But here's how American Box and Recycling has given those boxes a second life. So what we do is we work directly with bulk users of those boxes, such as manufacturing facilities, co-packers, pharmaceutical companies, just as a few examples. And instead of the facility putting those boxes directly into a recycling container, we collect them, bring them back to our facilities where they're sorted, stacked, inspected for usability, and then we put them right back into the supply chain, right? So we're skipping the need for the recycling facility or the energy expended, water, all of those pieces to put them right back into a pulp or fluting process and then turned into a whole new box. What we're doing is giving the box a second life immediately, right? Providing them to companies who can put products in them and ship them right back out. And the cool part about it is eventually that box hopefully makes its way back to a recycling facility and then back to a paper mill and turned into another box. But what we do is we're closing that gap and guaranteeing that second use. Next slide, please. So over the years, we've had the tremendous opportunity to see a number of different waste streams as we worked alongside our clients. And, we started with just once-used cardboard boxes, but today we're helping our clients divert everything from cardboard to plastic, pallets, metal, and organics. But here's what we believe makes us different. We're not just a waste hauler, a landfill operator, or a recycling center. As Susie said, our focus is truly on landfill diversion and material reuse, and we customize those programs to each of our customers' needs or our client needs. And as part of our commitment to our mission, we don't take anything up from a client until we know that we've identified a home for it. And that commitment is essentially what has breathed life into our mission for, well over 50 years now and helped us give millions of boxes a second life, again, reinforcing the sustainability of a corrugated box. And just as a side note, in 2020, we launched a new product line called Back to Earth, where we actually take what would be otherwise unusable, high-quality corrugate, whether it's a box that just can't be reused, sheets, things like that. We actually run it through a shredder and turn it into performance animal bedding for horses and other animals. So I could talk for a while on that, so I won't get into it today. But again, we're excited to be on this call. And if you could go to the next slide, and here's really the reason why. So this year, we've committed to certifying all of our business development staff, all of our professional staff as true advisors. You can see Jason is pictured on the slide. Jason Bachman is our first true certified advisor as of last month. In this year, and this is part of the conversation we had with Susie and why the connection, we're working on certifying all of our own facilities. There's no doubt in my mind that the combination of education and experience that we're going to gain from being part of, not only the community, right, but getting the certification is only going to benefit our clients and help them reach their zero waste goals. And so what our plan is, as we move forward is really continuing to dig in with each of our clients, looking for creative ways to enhance their landfill diversion programs, help them find monetary value in the materials that they're just typically disposing of, but make realistic and visible progress towards their sustainability goals. And we kind of laugh sometimes. We look back over our company's history, and we've been doing landfill diversion since 1956. There just really wasn't a name for it then. Today, there's not only a name, but a community much like this, the true community to help us and our clients make a really incredible impact on the environment. And a couple stats I want to highlight, and this was, amazing to me as I was going back and looking at the history. Just since 2010, we've given over 139 million boxes a second life, putting them right back into the supply chain. So again, really reinforcing the sustainability, of a corrugated box. And part of that, as we've continued to grow our landfill diversion programs, we've diverted over 37,000 tons of mixed plastic from regional landfills. Next slide, please. And just very quickly, wanted to highlight what we've been able to do with some of the clients we work with. So what you see on the screen is an example of a client that we've worked with since 2020, a nationally recognized fresh produce organization. And they asked us to help partner with them to drive some better progress towards their sustainability goals. The current vendor they were working with wasn't quite agile enough, and so they asked us to come in. And so we were able to take the experience we have, evaluate their waste stream, and put together a plan. That plan, again, kind of speaks to our core mission. It started with just diverting cardboard from a typical recycling program, and since then has evolved into a program that includes cardboard, pallets, plastics, and then most recently organic with one of their facility locations. So we've diverted over 2,400 tons from a regional landfill in just the 2 years we've been working with them. That program has helped them reduce the equivalent of 11,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, for the client, the icing on the cake is we were able to find monetary value to the customer in those materials. And so we've helped them generate over $400,000 in revenue through the sale of their materials. and again, tying back into the true piece, we haven't stopped there. We're helping to expand these programs into additional facilities and looking forward to partnering with them on not only the landfill diversion, but really helping them achieve zero waste at their facilities and hopefully being able to partner with them on that certification. So, in closing, I do really want to thank Susie and the team for True to, allowing us for being on this call to share what we're doing at American Box. And, I would say if you have questions or if you're looking for a way to challenge what I would call the status quo as it relates to landfill diversion, we'd love to share some more details about what we're doing, and also continually excited to plug in more with True, this community, and certifying the rest of our advisors throughout 2022. So again, Susie, the rest of the panelists, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. And thanks for calling in despite your travel woes. We'll head on to some Q&A because we do have quite a few. I know we're getting close to time. So I will go ahead and pull some of these up really quick. I know Adam and there's a lot on glass here for you, Scott, and Adam, there's a few for you as well. There's been some talk about extended producer responsibility. So I might just have you go first, Adam, if you don't mind, just since that was a little bit of a topic in the chat, and kind of if you want to fill in the audience on what your thoughts are there.
Sure. So EPR is, of course, an incredibly nuanced and complex discussion that we'll try to do justice in just a minute or two here. To me, the biggest headline of the EPR narrative in 2022 is that industry has flipped from opposing it to supporting it. And there's an asterisk when I say supporting it, because of course it's the devil's always in the details, right? And for reasons real and perceived, that is the case with EPR. I think what we want to see, what the industry stakeholders want to see is an EPR program that is inclusive of all packaging types and materials, and that gives industry an appropriate amount of seat at the table of decision making, so that they can not just pay for the system, they can also influence the system and ensure that it feeds their manufacturing cycles, them being one, not the only, but one really important beneficiary of a high functioning EPR program. I also think Scott really nailed it in his comments in the chat. If folks saw those, and Scott would welcome further thoughts from you if you have them.
On EPR, sure. I mean, I tried to answer in there. There's a connectivity issue between paying for collection and the actual value of all the commodities that come through there, right? So, in my presentation, I mentioned that the really high recycling rates that you see in Europe and Canada that model the EPR programs do not rely on commingled single stream. Okay, commingled single stream is I'm not saying it's can't be done that way, but if you're going to use commingled single stream, the facilities have to be properly equipped with the right technology and invested in like a factory, so that the material going through them can be sorted properly. I saw one question about a local hauler that doesn't like glass in their machines and things of that nature. There's lots of ways that they can improve that by taking the glass out early. And also the problem with glass is, in the economics of the system, is the haulers who also own landfills love to get paid by weight. So the heavier material goes in a landfill. They may be saying that to convince you to not put glass where they have to work at it in the recycling system. And if you just put it in the trash, they just throw it in the landfill anyway, and they get paid by the weight in the landfill. So there are plenty of ways to do glass well, just not in those trash trucks with big giant hydraulic presses and MRFs that don't sort the glass out early. You want to take the glass out early in the single stream system and not let it go all the way through to the end of the system.
Terrific. Thank you, guys. I've got another one that's both for you, Adam and Scott, to probably answer from your own perspective. And it's slightly related to our own priorities at True, but you both are working with a lot of partner companies, and have any of them really expressed, and I mean, I personally know a few of them, right? Because I mentioned they're pursuing True, but interest in ways to reduce the packaging before it really gets to this point of recycling. And or is there, an interest in moving away from plastics maybe into something more sustainable, like a glass, as Scott, you work with. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with with those kind of questions or issues as they come up with your stakeholders.
Yeah, Adam, do you want to go first, or?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. I'll say 99.9% of companies out there are interested in using less packaging. And the cynic's viewpoint, which holds true, is that packaging is an expense to the company. Of course, they want to minimize that. However, they have to balance that with consumer expectations and what the marketing department wants to do, and things like extending shelf life of food and providing safe pharmaceuticals and a number of other things. I'll say this: recyclability and recycling gets a lot of attention in the sustainability conversation around packaging. And I think it's easy to argue. I want to argue against the idea that it probably gets too much emphasis. That said, it's really important. And it's a way for consumers to participate and for the company to participate. And it's just a key tenet of circularity. So I don't see that going away, but there's a ton of action in finding the right material, for a variety of reasons that are, surrounded by charged opinions. Yes, companies are absolutely moving out of plastic packaging. There's a paper-based alternative for nearly everything. To Scott's credit, we see plenty of companies switching over to glass or upgrading to glass, as I believe the tagline was, or maybe still is. So yeah, the motion out there is not limited to recyclability by any stretch. I think if you scout through some of even just the big obvious named companies' annual sustainability reports, you'll see a pretty diverse and robust portfolio of efforts. But when the conversation is had, that's when I think recycling typically comes to the forefront and can kind of hog all the attention.
Yeah, I think Adam touched on like the secret sauce in there that is doesn't really get talked about enough. Is this the marketing professionals, that the brands are always looking to distinguish their product with a package. And so the more unique and the more bespoke the package, the harder it is to fit into a system that gets into recycling and reuse. It's totally doable to have a reuse and refill system. Glass is great for that. But you need to give a little bit on the uniqueness of each brand's bottle and be able to work collaboratively and collectively on a system where we're moving all of the bottles back through a return system.
Thank you, Scott, for bringing that up. And both of you mentioned the marketing piece, because that is something that with True, we're trying to say it's not just your sustainability professional that needs to be involved in this certification. You need to be working with everyone in your company to achieve these goals. It's a holistic shift we have to make together. One of our True committed customers is Smuckers, and I very familiar. I'm a big fan of their peanut butter. Sorry, this just is Susie talking, not True, but it's one of the only peanut butters you can find in a glass jar. So I think that's part of my loyalty, is I feel like I'm making a healthier choice because I'm not getting any plastic in that realm. So sorry for that small plug for Smuckers. But let's go back. I know we're right at time, so I want to be respectful. But there's just there was so much about the glass questions for you, Scott. Okay. One of them, I know you wanted to kind of distinguish about the bottle bills. Like, are there bottle bills for PET and glass where you were putting them
bottle
on
bills are for all the packaging material. So a bottle bill is usually about a product that's being put out there, and it's usually PET cans and glass that are sometimes it's being expanded to polypropylene milk jugs and things of that nature. But typically it's not about the package so much as it is about the single use product that's being sold.
Okay. And then there was this question about the infinite recyclability given the different colors. So does that affect that?
No, all the colors same. There's a little bit of an oxide that will turn the glass, brown, amber, or green versus clear. Wine bottles are a big mix of amber and green. I mean, look at all the different versions of wine bottles that you get out there. And so they mix amber and green together to get really dark, color. So and all of the glass processing facilities can sort the color. That doesn't change anything about it. You may be limited on, it'll be harder for us to get to a 100% completely recycled glass product, and keep a color consistency, but we can easily make bottles with 92 to 95% recycled content.
That's great. I love anytime we can do a myth busting session. I appreciate that, because we all hear these reasons why things don't work, or, so thank you for sharing that. We have some more questions I will share. I want to respect the time of our panelists. You've given us so much. And Scott, I know you're being pulled to a conference, and Adam, lots of recycling partnership priorities, and Brandon, hopefully you're boarding a plane soon. So thank you all so much for what you've given our audience today. And we will certainly be in touch with, maybe we get some more of these questions answered and put those, issue those after the event. But I just appreciate all your time and all you're doing to progress the circular economy and recycling in our world. Have a great rest of your time. Thank you, attendees, for hanging in there with us as we went a little over. And we'll see you on our next community call in August, which is going to feature construction industry and how true is being applied there, led by my colleague Celeste. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.